Why don't you go ahead and just kind of give us a little bit of a background on yourself? Obviously, I know you're, training dogs right now. I know you obviously have a PhD, I believe in, what is it, neurobiology or neuroscience?
It's natural sciences. The way it works in Germany is a little bit different. So you kind of pick a topic. So I was doing my PhD at the Institute for Tropical Medicine.
Okay.
And you kind of get then into all kinds of field because they make you do that. And then after I graduated, and it says natural sciences on my diploma or whatever, at Columbia University, that's where it became more a movement into neuroscience itself because I was working with the gut-brain axis.
Got it.
And then I made the jump off of the academic world.
Very cool. Yeah, so I'm just really interested to hear how kind of the progression of you taking that knowledge and applying it to dog training kind of came about.
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't plan for it. I really didn't. It wasn't really that I was like, "Ooh, this is missing in the dog training world." Because when I started pivoting away from academia and then kind of wondering what I'm going to do with my life, I did have the experience when I volunteered in Thailand where. And there was a tuberculosis lab, so nothing to do with dogs, but there were a lot of stray dogs hanging out.
Sure.
There was this weird combination of, hey, I'm coming to this lab and I want to help you guys optimize your lab processes so you can help more migrants not die from tuberculosis. And what I thought I'm coming for was definitely not what they had me do or what they actually needed. So that's where it dawned on me that, what's happening behind these big lab walls at these Ivy League schools, what's happening in the field, like vastly different and such a huge disconnect, not just in dog training, or in canine science, but really probably in a lot of different fields. And at the same time, it's like, when I started studying biology, it's like I love animals and I always had a cat and like the whole stuff. And then there were these street dogs and like, let's see what they do. And they came after me. And I was like running away from them on my bike. It's like, damn it, I don't know anything about these dogs here living on the street in Thailand. What am I going to do with this? And there was this urge of like, that sucks. I hate that feeling of I'm studying all that thing for like 12 years. And then, hands-on wise, I have no idea. And then I got more hands-on and had my own dog and blah. And then I got kind of bombarded with this clash and all these questions about how to train a dog. What's the best way of training a dog? And I had these questions for my own dog if I wanted to take it to the next level in terms of training. And then I had to answer these questions myself because I felt like I got lost. I fell down this rabbit hole of online dog training, social media stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, well, let me see if I can answer these questions myself.
Sure.
And that's what you said at the beginning. That's how it really came together. It's like puzzling together what I know in terms of theory and neuroscience and just the animal behavior and what do you do and what I see in front of me and what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. And then I started talking more about this and, 5 years, 6 years later, now we're here.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, do you do a lot of like hands-on work with clients and stuff?
I still do. I did it the first 4 years when I really started getting into dog training.
Sure.
And I was on the board of a rescue organization here in Atlanta. And so I created rehab programs and went in and helped these dogs to well, at least the beginning of rehab, evaluating dogs that came in. And then also doing lots of in-person stuff. And then the pandemic hit. Mm-hmm. And I kind of pivoted a little bit and put more educational stuff together, which is now mostly online. So I have this mix of my online programs, but also going for in-person seminars. So that's happening more so. And then here and there, if I have time and if I have open spots, I do some in-person too.
Yeah, very cool. The rescue rehab world, like working in that is a really, really interesting space because obviously you're dealing with these animals in such a complex and counterproductive environment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear a little bit about how you how you kind of worked through some of that, and how you kind of came up with plans to help these dogs like while they were still in the shelters, and then how you kind of saw that transition as they were getting homed.
Yeah, it's messy work. Sure. And it's not as fulfilling as a lot of people make it sound like, that you see these beautiful transformations, because oftentimes you honestly don't see these beautiful transformations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And after they get adopted, I oftentimes also lost touch with how they're really doing.
Yeah.
I think my biggest work came into making the staff that works day to day with these dogs, and potential adopters aware that what you see is not necessarily what you get.
Yeah.
Mostly in the context of, you see this really skittish, anxious, aggressive dog. It doesn't mean it is a skittish, anxious, aggressive dog. You just got to put some work into helping. But it could also be the other way around. You see this really shy, cute dog, give this dog a little bit more confidence and too much freedom, and it might actually become a little more of a pushy dog and problematic dog. So what I did was less of like this classic obedience training with these dogs, and really just get them out of their shell, see what they're motivated by, what kind of behaviors is sporadic or stress driven, what's the true personality, and then kind of help the staff understand it themselves and see it themselves, and then communicate it to the adopters, and help also understand these are good adopters, or these are suitable homes and these are not suitable homes. And there is some sort of, breed bias, especially here in the South.
Yeah.
There was basically all pit mixes, here and there, Shepherd or Belgian Mountain, or even powerful dogs, right? And then you come in with like 2 little kids and a family because they want to do a good thing, and like saying no to something like that seems so not right, because you want to give this dog a new home. Yeah. But at the same time, you gotta look like big picture here, right? Where's this dog going to end up if you don't know how this dog is going to behave in certain environments? So this kind of stuff was happening basically.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think we have a couple of different shelters that we work pretty regularly with here that'll send dogs to training with us, or we'll do, in-person stuff where we go to the shelter and, assess some of the dogs they have and stuff. And the ones that I've noticed that have made the biggest impacts of things have been the ones that have had some sort of kind of on-staff training or, behavior specialist or something like that could spend some time not doing just obedience training and stuff with the dogs, because that's a big point I had on here is your opinions on the difference between training from the, original sense of like obedience commands and sit down, stay and all of those types of things, and then behavior, which I view those two things as very, very different, obviously. But sometimes I feel like they get meshed into one, where you get problem behavior cases and it's like, well, just put them through an obedience program, right? And make them more obedient and stuff, where it's just, it's much, much deeper than that. In a lot of cases, I feel like you can get a very obedient but still extremely dangerous or anxious or aggressive dog, Mm-hmm. But they put a lot of emphasis into just understanding the individual dogs, and if they're seeing problem behaviors, why they might be exhibiting those things, and how a lot of the things that the volunteers or the workers at the shelter might be doing to contribute to the problem, because they don't understand what they're doing and the messages they're sending to the dogs and all of those types of things, So that's really cool. So yeah, I mean, as far as the, the differences between training and behavior, like how do you view those two things as different in your work?
So everything you do with your dog is teaching your dog something. The dog is learning, and we think that training is kind of this encapsulated moment where we teach our dogs how to behave a certain way. But behavior is what they learn every single day. So I don't like this differentiation, because it's behavior that the dog learns. Either that's the behavior you want or you don't want, but the dog is learning something, right? Sure. All the time. And, obedience, yes, you have like a certain process that you go through, versus all these 23 hours of the day where you don't actively or not consciously interact with your dog.
Sure.
And that's the behavior that you see, and then that's the behavior you get that you want or don't want. And then you start the formal obedience to stop the first behavior that the dog learned along the way. So I think just the understanding of what it means to train a dog, that it doesn't mean, to have 5,000 different obedience commands, which is fun. You should do that regardless, right? I mean, a dog wants to have this kind of mental stimulation, but the actual behavior that most people want in their pet dogs, polite greeting, not pulling on the leash, all these things, you don't necessarily need formal obedience training, at least not in the first phase of learning.
Yep.
You just need to have certain way of being consistent, make it a win-win situation for the dog, manage what you don't want, show what you want, and you don't really need any formal obedience for that. And that's just how dogs learn, right? So learning is really putting life into context, and a dog is doing this all day long, whether you want it or not. So for me, again, behavior is what I'm more interested in, but it's still training because even if I don't train, it's still kind of doing something.